Hey, this is Ed Robertson, and this is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet most of these people through my work in land conservation, or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time up high in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, adventurers, pretty much anyone who's doing important work, has an interesting story, and loves the American West. This is a special podcast episode that was recorded live in Los Angeles at Maxwell Alexander Gallery's 10-year anniversary exhibition. Maxwell Alexander Gallery was founded back in 2012 when brothers Beau Alexander and Logan Maxwell Hagege decided to start an artist-focused gallery that spotlighted the West's most cutting-edge art. What started with a crazy idea, a small space, and a few artists has evolved into one of the most well-known galleries in the West. A gallery that celebrates the many complex facets of the American West through paintings and sculptures. This is a recording of an artist panel discussion that was held on Saturday evening, just before the public exhibition began. The panel includes both Beau and Logan, as well as renowned Western artists Kim Wiggins, Eric Bowman, and T. Allen Lawson, who goes by Tim. We recorded this conversation in a space next door to the gallery, and we quickly filled all of the chairs, and it became a standing room-only event. The six of us sat on stools in front of Logan's 8-foot by 12-foot painting called The Song at Sunset, which Logan discusses during the panel. If you'd like to see an image of that massive work of art, there's a link in the episode notes. Over the course of the hour, the six of us had a wonderful conversation that covered a wide range of topics, everything from the founding of Maxwell Alexander Gallery all the way to expectations about the future of Western art markets. Tim speaks about how he used to go out looking for scenes to paint, but now he patiently waits for the paintings to come to him. Kim talks about his unique upbringing in New Mexico and how professional art captured him from an early age. Eric discusses how he treats each of his paintings as an open-ended story, so as to draw the viewer deeper into the work. And those are just a few of the many topics we talked about. Be sure to check out the episode notes for a full list of topics. And if you leave this episode wanting to hear more from these artists, don't worry. I've convinced them all to join me for their own episodes in the coming months. And you can always go back and listen to my first episode with Logan, which is linked in the notes. A huge thank you to Beau and Logan for inviting me to this one-of-a-kind event, and thank you to all the artists for being such fun, welcoming, and fascinating people who contribute so much to the culture of the American West. I was honored to be included, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Hi, everyone. Good to see some of you again for the second night, and welcome everyone else to our 10-year anniversary exhibition. Happy to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. We're going to do a little different artist panel interview. We invited out our friend Ed Robertson from the Mountain Prairie podcast. We thought it'd be interesting to hear his take on the art scene that we're involved in and just everything else, that all the interesting questions he always has. So on the panel tonight is going to be on my left here, Eric Bowman. To the right of Ed is Kim Wiggins. And we got Logan Maxwell Hagege. And Tim Lawson. He goes by T. Allen Lawson, I'm sorry. All right. And myself, apparently.
Yeah, my name is Ed Robertson, and about 7 years ago I started this podcast called Mountain and Prairie, and it's a podcast about the American West, and specifically about interesting people, cool people doing important work in the West. And you can probably already tell from this accent I have is that I'm not from California. I'm not from the West. I'm from eastern North Carolina, but I moved out west almost 20 years ago. And I used to spend a lot of time up in Montana doing work, and this is not a joke. On 2 separate occasions, completely unrelated, I started talking to different Montana ranchers, and the more I talked, the more their face kind of scowled up. And they both said, "Are you from Scotland?" So somebody was like 400 years ago, but not me. But I'm really honored to be here. And Beau said he wants to hear my take on the Western art scene. I'm just a fan, and I'm a fan of all these guys, and I'm a fan of everything that Beau and Logan have done. And so I'm just really pleased to be here. So thank you all for coming. Before we start anything, I think we need to give huge congratulations to Beau and Logan for everything they've done over the past 10 years. And so I thought we'd start out talking about that. Beau and Logan, 10 years ago today, you're getting ready to start up this gallery. What was your vision at the time? I mean, why did you decide we need to start a gallery, or we're the guys to start a gallery? We can do this in a different way than it's been done.
So thinking back about 10 years ago, Beau was actually working for me in my studio. I was basically running the studio manager, helping out with all the stuff that goes along with being an artist, like ordering frames, keeping art supplies in the studio, helping with shipping and stuff like that. So we were together every day. We'd go to lunch together every day, and then we started talking about the idea of opening a gallery. He'd been around my experience as an artist for several years, and I started to think, and Beau shared these thoughts, that we felt that we could start something that would be very artist-friendly. That was the first thought, a safe haven for artists. So that was really the spark of the idea. Can we do something, find a little space, and open something up? And that's kind of how it worked. Beau kind of took the lead, found a great little space in Culver City, that was our first gallery location. We opened the doors. We started the gallery. Client list was whoever was on my email list, which was not very many people. And I remember the first day I ever sat in the gallery, I never really worked at the gallery. I just kind of helped it get off the ground. But my wife and I were sitting in the gallery one day. It was a rainy Sunday, and I can't remember the guy's name, but an actor walked in the door, and he starts looking at paintings. And I was like, see, this is going to be so easy. Some famous guy's going to come in and start buying paintings, and that's how it's going to go. And then I probably gave him way too much attention and scared him out of the door. But so that was kind of my first day ever at the gallery, and he didn't buy a painting, and it was a slow progression from there. But that's kind of how we got things going.
And so, Beau, when you look at where you've gotten over the last 10 years, Logan last night when we had a discussion last night at dinner, and Logan was saying that I don't like business stuff, and I don't like figuring out taxes and all that kind of stuff. And so, Beau, you're obviously a extremely talented business guy who's able to balance creativity with business and kind of walk that knife edge of making things profitable, but also not sacrificing creativity. Have there been any big surprises for you over the last 10 years? I mean, what's kind of been the craziest surprise you've had now that you can look back with hindsight?
I think the biggest thing that I get everywhere, and I don't know if this is going to come off weird, but everybody is so complimentary and so willing to express how happy they are with kind of the movement that's emerged out of this gallery. It's humbling. We're tucked away here in Los Angeles, away from a lot of things that might be day to day in other cities. And when we travel or people are nice enough to come into LA and visit us, it's really humbling to meet everyone from different walks of life and hear their experiences in the West, and then kind of the contrast of what we bring and how excited they feel about it. So it makes us feel great. And back to Logan, I know a lot of people split us up in business and creativity, and it's really a mesh of both of us. We're both business minded, we're both creative, and we bounce ideas off each other. We're constantly critiquing each other's work, whether that be business or art, and asking for ideas and how to make things better. So yeah, and the other biggest surprise is that we actually did it. I mean, we started from nothing. We had no client list, and it's really a testament to Logan's relationships that he had with all the artists. Because when we started the gallery, right off the bat, we had a pretty killer roster. So it's just a testament to Logan's reputation and all the hard work he put into it.
Yeah, and one more question about the gallery and kind of what you're looking for. Obviously, everybody that shows in your gallery is extremely talented, but what I've learned just from getting to be friends with Logan and then getting to know a lot of different people in the Western art world is that it seems like everybody you work with is also just a really good person. And they're the kind of people that you want to hang around with. And we were talking about that today, Beau, about I want to have everybody you represent on my podcast because they're also interesting and just fun people to hang out with. And that was confirmed last night. Can you talk, both you and Logan, talk a little bit about what you're looking for? Because it seems like there's artistic talent you're looking for, obviously, but there's more than that. How do you go about kind of evaluating who is a fit and who may not be?
You know, it's hard. I guess ultimately it starts with the art first. We have a certain aesthetic and quality that we look for that we're not really willing to compromise on. From the beginning, we said we're not going to compromise on quality. We don't care if that's a financially bad decision, you know, because I think a gallery has a responsibility to represent the best because people come into the gallery, they trust our vision, and they trust us as an expert to present the quality art out there. So if we just took in 100 artists, knowing that, 50 of them probably, aren't up to at least our standards, I think it's not much integrity in that. And so, it always started from quality art, and we always knew it would be a smaller roster. And then beyond that, it's all the artists in the gallery are, I think we have a different relationship with them than maybe other galleries because I know what Logan's kind of upswing in this business has been or struggle in the business. It wasn't always easy. So I always, I look at all the artists in the gallery as almost like family members. We're constantly in communication. We're texting, we're calling, checking in on each other. And so if I don't like them and they don't like me, it's not going to be a very good relationship. And, I'm not going to want to speak highly of their art because I don't know about everyone here, but when I look at a painting, I see the artist, and when I like the artist, I like the painting even more. And so that's why these events are so important because everyone gets to meet the artist. And my experience in the West is everybody, almost everybody is so nice, so caring. I mean, so many of our clients that are here tonight have opened their homes to us and invited us to come stay with them up in Montana, up in here, up in there. And even the artist, I spent a couple weeks with Billy Shank out in Santa Fe, and he was nice enough to put me and my girlfriend up. So I can't say anything bad about anyone in the gallery. Everyone's just so gracious and so humble and selfless, really.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, being an outsider, it's a welcoming environment. I'm not an artist, and I come in and last night get to hang out with all these great people and have great conversations, and it's just you've really created something special here. Tim, since you're holding the microphone, I'm gonna ask you a question now. I was telling these guys before we started that by any normal standard, the amount of Googling I do on these people before I start interviewing would be considered stalking. But since I'm researching for a podcast, I can do it. And I was watching a YouTube video of you, Tim, talking about your process over the years. And there was a quote in there. You said early in your career, you spent a lot of time outside kind of looking for things to paint, looking for scenes. And then at some point along the way, it switched. And I think the quote was, you don't look for paintings, paintings come to me. And so can you talk about that kind of change in your process and how that came to be?
I've been doing this for a long time now, about 45 years or so. And I used to go out, we get together in what they call plein air painting, where most of my work was done outside, on the spot, painting directly from nature. And it's always fun to be around a group of people. So we go and you usually drive around and you might see something, and then the partner you're with or the person you're with, the other painters, and they're like, I don't quite see that. So you spend a lot of time just driving around, not getting much done. But occasionally you do work. But now I have no idea what's going to inspire me or where an idea is going to come from. It might be something that I've seen 100 times for 100 straight days on my drive from where we are in northern Wyoming to my studio in town. And then on that morning, if your mind is right and you're open and you see it, you might see something just slightly different, and it sparks an idea. And then I'm a very slow painter. I'll work work on a number of things at once, but I'll work, 4, 6, 8 months on a painting. And during that time, it's trying to, kind of fight your way back upstream like a salmon does to get back to that original little spark of an idea that you had. And I paint quite a few different things, subject matter. I have a studio in Mid-Coast, Maine also. But I start each painting slightly different. I don't have a system that I approach my work with. I constantly experiment with different materials and different subject matter that I like because it makes it a little more challenging, but I also never know what combination of mediums or different materials I'm gonna find something interesting in. So it's always a little different.
Do you have to fight the urge to kind of get in? Like, I would imagine it would be easy with your experience level to just get in a routine. Like this kind of art sells. I know I can create this, but you just said you're always trying new things, and I feel like that. I would guess that takes some effort. Do you have to kind of push yourself for that, or does it just happen?
I don't, and I've been lucky in the sense, extremely lucky, that I've had just enough people interested in what I do, and so when I get into the studio, I never think of is this going to be popular or will this sell? For me, that's a kiss of death. If you start to paint what other people, or while you're working on the piece, if you're worried about how it's going to be perceived. For me, it's just it gets harder and harder the longer I've done this. I know more than I did 35 years ago, but I struggle more now with my paintings than I have at any point in my career. And I hope that my knowledge kind of outpaces my ability to convey what I want to, but I'm not even certain that's the case at times. I might be going backwards.
Well, I'll say with every answer I get, I have about 10 or 20 new questions, and I've already strong-armed all three of these guys into coming on the podcast for a full hour and a half long conversation. So we might just be scratching the surface tonight, but there's more to come. Oh, maybe 2 hours for you if you. Kim, speaking of what Tim was saying about you gotta follow your own, you gotta blaze your own trail. You can't be thinking about how other people are gonna react. When you and I spoke on the phone last week, you were telling me the story about when you decided to kind of follow your own path, and I thought that was very interesting. And Kim's paintings, one of the first ones you're going to see when you walk in the gallery over there is Kim, and it's such a unique look, but it wasn't always that way. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I started in the art world early. I was fortunate there was an art dealer from Scottsdale that was traveling through New Mexico. I grew up on a ranch in southern New Mexico. And he stopped at my parents' ranch, and after they got through visiting, he was trying to sell some paintings that he had, Western art paintings. He saw some, I did small sculpture of wildlife, coyotes and bears and, that kind of stuff. And anyway, he took asked my parents if he could take some of the stuff out to Scottsdale, and he cast it into bronze. So I started, my first work went on the market when I was 12 years old. So I started very, very young. And so because of that, my parents were very supportive in the arts and took me to meet a lot of famous artists. My father was a photojournalist, and so he was very invested in the arts. And with that said, I ended up, after high school, going in the military, and I couldn't bring my sculpture supplies with me, so I started painting. And I spent 5 years in Europe and was very inspired by the Impressionists, Monet and Armand Guillemot and many others. And when I came back, the same art dealer contacted me and he said, "Hey, I hear you're out of the military now and I'd like to see what you're doing." And I said, "Well, I'm not doing sculpture anymore, but I'm painting." He said, "Well, I'll be on the Santa Fe Plaza next week. Would you bring some of your paintings up?" So I brought, maybe 10 paintings up for him to look at. I never thought I would make a living as an artist, but whenever I got to the plaza, he took 7 of them back to Scottsdale and sold one the next day. And the next year, I was invited into a group called the Society of American Impressionists. There were 30 national members, Robert Daughters and McCaw, and there were a bunch of really, Gonski, Goebel, Doug Higgins, just a bunch of really great artists that were in it. And I was invited to a big show that was in St. Louis, Missouri. And it was the first big show I was ever in. I was in my mid-20s. And I walked in this building and I saw one of my paintings way, way across the room. So I shot over to go look at it. And I got maybe from here to the wall and I realized it wasn't mine. It was another artist. And now my work sold well. The work at the show, I think I had 5 paintings and all of the work sold. But I realized when I left the show that I had no vision of my own. And so I started searching at that time and had a number of different artists that I had met growing up. My parents were friends with Peter Hurd and Henriette Wyeth. They took me to meet Thomas Hart Benton when I was a kid. They took me to meet George O'Keeffe when I was a kid. They took me to meet William Lumpkins. And my father ended up becoming interested in writing and started writing about the New Mexico modernists. Wrote a book on Alfred Meringue, Emil Bistrom, William Lumpkins, Kid Russell, Charles Russell's early career and stuff. So anyway, that was sort of an aha moment where I realized I had no vision of my own as an artist. And so over the course of about probably 3 or 4 years, I started pulling from all of these other influences. There was another artist named Alexander Hogue who had been mentored by Ernest Blumenschein when he was a young man in Taos. He would go to Taos every summer and he would stay with the Blumenscheins. And he took a liking to me, and he was in his 80s, and he mentored me the last probably 10 years of his life and just sowed incredible things into my life. And I think it's so important for artists to sow into younger people and to give. We've all been entrusted with a gift, whether we're an artist or not. I mean, each one of you here, you've been entrusted with incredible giftings, and I believe that it's sort of our job to share those things. And he certainly shared his life with me and really changed my life. If you look at his work, you can certainly see the influence.
That's great. When I do the podcast, I have a editor that goes through and he writes down every resource that somebody mentions, an artist, a book. And I'm thinking, when Kim comes on, that guy's going to be working hard, listing out all these. I love it. These conversations, they make me realize how little I actually know. Eric, now the spotlight's on you, sir. When I was doing my Google stalking on you, I found a really good video on YouTube where you were talking about the storytelling component of your work and how when you paint a picture, a painting, you want it to be an open-ended story. So can you talk about that concept? Because in this particular video, you were highlighting a work and going through every detail and how it was all leading towards making the viewer have to figure out where it's going or guess where it's going.
All right. So, is it just me, or do I look like Bachelor number 2 sitting up here?
Does that mean that I'm the one that hands out the roses?
Let's not go that far. So, can you repeat the question, please? Oh, no, I know what you're talking about.
You're off the island.
When I create a picture, I don't want to beat the viewer over the head with too much information and spell everything out for them. And this is nothing against anybody who's a realist or extreme hyper-realism kind of painting where every detail, every hair, everything is painted and there's not much left for the viewer to use their imagination with. I want my pieces to be kind of a springboard to a narrative where the audience decides where the story is going, what's it about. And there can be a multitude of different answers to that, and none of them are wrong. All of them can be right. It's just depending on the person that's looking at the painting, what kind of mood they're in, how much imagination they have, how far they want to go with it. But I really believe in audience participation. Since painting is obviously not a performance kind of an art, it's a very slow process for me. But I want to leave something for the audience to enjoy and get involved with.
When you think about your painting next door, Long Way Home, are there any cues in there that if we were just sitting there looking at it that you would tell me about now? Because people can go over and look at it in a minute. Is there any kind of guidance you could give folks that are going to go check it out now, or is that
as far as the narrative goes? Yeah. It's wide open.
Wide open.
He might be coming from something, heading home, going to I was just recently in Taos for San Geronimo, is that what it's, Davidson? Yeah, feast day. And he could be coming back from the feast day, or maybe heading to that, or he's going to work, or he's going to a bar, or wherever you want to go with it.
That's great. I loved that. Makes the whole experience from somebody on the outside of the art world like me looking at it, makes it so much richer. Another question for you: you grew up around here. You're kind of a local California kid, and then you're now up in the Northwest. But how did the American West capture your imagination? Why did that become a focus for you?
Yeah, I completely other end of the spectrum where Kim grew up on a ranch. I grew up on a skateboard in southern Orange County. So nothing to do with Western art at all. But the Western ideal, and especially in popular media when I was growing up, was everywhere. It's on TV, it was in the movies, all that. So I was very aware of it. But as far as a subject to pursue in fine art, I have to give credit to Logan and some of the other guys that started out, Glenn Dean. Who else was here first in the beginning? As far as Western art,
Josh Elliott.
Yeah, Josh Elliott is another one. So these guys were standouts, and they were doing Western art a little differently. It wasn't the old. Again, I'm not throwing off on the cowboy artists of America, but when they started out, it was all about historical accuracy, tons of detail, stuff I wasn't really interested in. I'm interested in creating a picture that has interesting light and shadow, shapes, composition. The subject matter is really secondary, but it's a great subject to explore and paint because everything is organic, pretty much, from the figure to the horse to the leather, the great outdoors, the light, and it made sense as a great vehicle to pursue. And when I saw these guys doing it in a new, different, fresher way, I mean, look at this painting behind us here. It's not full of a lot of minute detail. It's a beautiful composition, but there's a simplicity and a freshness to it. So Beau has contemporary artists in his stable. A lot of them are here, and those guys have been on the leading edge doing contemporary art. What this gallery has done and succeeded in is bringing an old idea or an old, traditional, iconic subject matter into the now, the contemporary, by doing it in a new and fresh way. And while I got the mic, I just got to thank them for letting me be a part of it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and that brings me to a question I had for Beau. Beau, it seems like both you and Logan, you encourage the artists that you work with to really chase after their own voice and really develop their own voice, but it's not like you're telling them what to do. And I was thinking, being here in Los Angeles, it almost seemed like the role of a director. Really good directors can get the best performance out of the actors that they work with. And I was curious, kind of what your process is for that, of encouraging the artists you work with to be creative and do their thing, but also not to try to get in their way or maybe overly influence them. Do you have a process, or is it a case-by-case basis? How does that work?
A lot of times, artists want to experiment, and there's two aspects to it. There's the business side where, of course you have to make a living, you have to sell paintings and take care of your family. And then there's the fully artistic side where you want, from my experience talking with these guys so many years, I find that they want to break out of what they're known for, or they want to, do something different. And anytime an artist talks to me and shows me a painting that is maybe not the quintessential piece that you would think from them, and they always say, like, should I do it? Should I put it in the show? I always say yes, and I'm like, don't worry about the selling part of it. That's my job. I'll figure it out. I think so many times when that happens, it frees the artist up to do their thing and really kind of flow with it. 9 times out of 10, the painting sells in a second, because people like that. They like the fresh look. It's a balancing act for sure, but you can see the show next door. I asked everyone, do something big, let's paint, paint it and they will come. And we've kind of always had that mentality, even with the gallery, build it and they will come. Build a mainly Western art gallery in Los Angeles, they'll find us because the quality's there, people seek it out.
When you said the word big, and I'd be crazy not to ask Logan to talk about this big work of art behind us. so stunning. I mean, I remember seeing this online or on the computer. I knew it was impressive then, but then when you get to really look at it here, amazing piece of work. Can you just kind of give us an idea of when did you decide, or how did you decide to tackle something of this size?
Early on in my development as an artist, I forced myself to paint large paintings because I think I didn't want to develop that fear of large canvases and how scary they can be. For me, a little canvas is as scary as something that's 8 by 12 feet. So I quickly got over that fear. And with this particular painting, I actually just ordered the canvas and had it sitting in my studio, nagging me day after day, week after week. And that's how I got myself to do it. I just said, I'm going to order this big canvas. It's going to stare at me every day. And sooner or later, I'm going to have to jump in and get to it. So that's really what it was. It's interesting. I started this painting in a studio of mine, an old studio that's about 2,000 square feet. 15 or 16 foot ceilings. And then halfway through that, my family and I moved about an hour and a half north of where we were. Hadn't found a studio yet, so I moved this painting into a 2-car garage. I mean, it just got in. I carried it myself literally on my back, like this, under the garage door, got it in. It just fit on this wall. It had really awful lighting on it. And basically, the second half of this painting was done in a 2-car garage with awful lighting, and so it was a challenge for sure. But again, it doesn't stand out as a huge challenge any more than something that's 6 or 8 inches wide. They're all very difficult to do, and I try to put the same amount of thought into something small or large. I don't have a whole lot else to say. I mean, it's kind of fun. It's a lot of people that have been in my life, a lot of people I've painted, all appear in this painting, so it's kind of fun for me to see them all together. This scene never really took place. It's just something that I put together, sort of composed all these figures together to make the thing happen. So
it's stunning.
Let's stop looking at that painting.
Yeah. And you just sitting there alone.
Maybe I could talk about it.
Yeah, please
bit.
do.
I think everyone should, after this talk, come and take a look at it, and obviously everything else in the gallery next door. But when you're looking at a painting like this, there's I think certain things that certain artists are gonna really stand out for and be known for throughout time. And I think for Logan, it's the way he works light and the way he works reflective light and the values in his colors. So it's looking at this picture from far away. It's so graphic. It's meant to read from as far away as you can get from it. But if you get closer to it, you could see the subtleties, and I think really the mastery of Logan. In the folds of the blankets, the thin reflective light on the hat, or the detail in the face, and then the lack of detail, and the way he works 3D with 2D, he creates the depth with the value changes, and really, this isn't just a random placing of figures on the canvas. It's a roadmap that he's created that you might not even realize, and your eye is doing exactly what he wants you to do. That's why he's using the big cloud, using the shadows, using the stage in the foreground. Everything is there for a reason and is fully thought out. This is kind of him flexing his muscle right here on a big piece.
When I look at this and when I look at the artwork of really everybody in the gallery, I'm struck by the historical significance of a lot of it. I have a lot of historians on my podcast, and so I've got a deep appreciation for history. And I know that all of you do as well. I was wondering if we could kind of go down the line here and talk about kind of maybe the responsibility you feel to understand the history, to present it in a way that is, accurate, but in your own artistic way. Tim, maybe if you could start, because I know that, you've gone deep into history, and I know your family's got a lot of big appreciation for history.
Well, I think I always slightly get a kick out of artists that say, I'm self-taught. To me, that just means they've never looked at anything. You can't look at a painting and not come away with some kind of influence. And so to have, it's nothing short of an appreciation of those. My father-in-law was historian David McCullough, and he always stressed that what we think of history is behind us, but it's really not. Those people were ahead of us. and we are following in their footsteps. And to not know a little bit about what they have gone through and the time they were in, it's awfully easy to look at them 100, 200 years later. We had the privilege to go to the Simon Norton Museum today, or Norton Simon Museum today, and you're looking at paintings, done in the mid 16th century, 17th century, and to not have an appreciation for a little understanding of what the hell was going on in the rest of the world. They weren't sitting around, watching series on Netflix. They were trying to survive, and yet they're still able to do that. And in many ways, we haven't improved on it from that time. And so, to me, it's just it's a humbling experience, but it's a show of appreciation and gratitude also to have a little wherewithal and even a slight knowledge and an understanding of what has come before you. And then it's, from myself personally, and I think we probably, I can only speak for myself, I really struggle with my paintings. And I think at times we look at our favorite artists and they just look like they're put together so effortlessly. And I know that is not really the case. I know they struggle with it, and they put their pants on the same we do every morning. But I think to have that understanding and appreciation, you have a bigger empathy for the profession as a whole.
Well, and Kim, along those same lines, your work is obviously heavily influenced by history, and I've heard your work described as the unexpected West. Can you talk about what that means to you?
I do a lot of historical work. I've painted everything from the Battle of the Alamo to Custer's Last Stand to I'm working on a large commission right now on Black history. And I think for me, historically, I watch, I'm constantly watching children because I want to see their response to my work. That's the next generation. And in my opinion, is my responsibility to convey history in a way, as you said, I've been talked of as sort of the unexpected West. And I don't think we're going to reach children the same way we reached them 100 years ago. I think we have to convey it in a fresh, new voice that they understand. They're constantly looking at their phones, scrolling through, high-keyed images, and, what's going to get them to stop and look at our history. And so I'm always looking at fresh approaches. When I'm creating something, once I get it on the wall, or if it's at a museum or whatever, I want to see how the children respond to it. And I mean, in all honesty, later on, some of those children actually are sitting in this room that saw some of my earlier pieces and stuff. And so later on, they are the art collectors, and they are the docents, and they are the painters of who we are as a people group. I think it's so important. Each society in history is known from their artwork primarily. What do you know of Rome? What do you know of Egypt? What do you know of China? You can just go down the list. And one day our society is going to be known. We're going to be gone. Our society is going to do just like Rome. It's going to zenith. And when a society zeniths, you can follow the creativity pattern of that society as well. Because when a society zeniths, so does the creativity in the arts. And so my responsibility as an artist is to create unique work. Logan, in what he's doing, he's telling you, I'm trying to create a vision that is unique, that will speak to our society and our time, and one day down the road, this society is not going to be there. I believe Western art is going to be the description that truly identifies who we are as a people group. I don't believe it's going to be abstract work. I think there's not that there's anything wrong with abstract. I love abstract. My wife and I collect abstract artwork. But I believe the main identifying force of America is seen in the West. You'll never see a painting by Charles M. Russell. I don't care if it's in Paris, Tokyo, or down under, and you're going to say, oh gosh, I wonder if that's from China. Or, man, I wonder if that, that piece that Logan did, gosh, I wonder if that piece was done in Paris. It's not going to happen. This is the identifying force of who we are as a people group. So I feel very strongly about that and very passionate about American history.
I love that. Again, we got a lot to talk about when you all come on the podcast for full episodes. Yeah, Eric, kind of picking up on some of the stuff that Tim has said, talking about how the artwork and the process continues to get harder and harder and more challenging. And I on one of my Google videos of you again, there was a thing where you said it should never be easy to create art. And so I was wondering if you could expand on that and just talk about your process. And I mean, how do you, first of all, do you believe that it should never be easy? Does it have to be hard for you to feel good about doing it? And then how do you kind of keep your foot on the gas to maintain that effort?
No, I was completely lying when you saw that video. I'm glad you switched the question up a little bit because Tim is clearly a historian, and I am not. I mean, you want to talk 70s rock and roll or Saturday morning cartoon shows, I'm your man.
We can talk about that.
But, so, it should be, first of all, if it's easy to do, you get bored. Everybody needs a challenge, and I want to push myself. I firmly believe that as a student of art, you never stop becoming a student. You're always going to be learning, and you should always be challenging yourself. I mean, there's enough challenges that just come with the job anyway. Trying to outdo yourself, I'm not in competition with any of these guys in the gallery, but they all spur me on because most all of them are all better than I am. I feel like that, and I want to keep my end up, keep up with these guys, and I always want to do better. I hope my best paintings are still ahead of me. I hope I haven't zenithed. It's a scary word. I don't think so. But it's all about challenging yourself, wanting to do better, wanting to grow. I think that's a natural aspiration, no matter what kind of vocation or avocation that you have.
Beau, one question for you. I know there are a lot of collectors in the audience, and we just are finally coming out of a very bizarre 2.5 years of COVID, which hit society in a big way and hit business in a big way. And then you hear all these predictions about a recession coming. And I'd be interested to hear from just a straight up business perspective, what were you thinking when COVID hit? And then from an investment, frame of mind, what do you think about as you hear ideas that a recession may be looming as far as the business of art?
Going back to COVID, it was particularly shocking for me that year because, speaking from a purely business standpoint, and not of the illness aspect of it, but just purely this unknown thing happening, because we had one of our most stacked years ever as far as exhibitions planned for that year. A lot of effort and work goes into planning out shows, and we're usually a year to two out in advance to give the artists plenty of time to do their thing. So, Logan had been working for a couple years on his biggest show ever, biggest solo show ever, and it was scary just from all fronts. And I don't know how, and maybe Logan remembers, but I just made a decision that I was going to pretend like COVID wasn't happening. And no, I just mean in general, the whole year. Yeah. So so much of our business, or at least my focus, has been on developing ways for people that aren't necessarily introduced to this work to be introduced to it. And I'm I guess of a generation that is used to going online a little bit more, and that was my focus from the beginning. Make sure the website was on point, make sure it was really easy to use, friendly, make sure it was updated. We started on social media super early. We don't take it too serious. We try to have fun with it, but it's a good way to get the word out. So I was like, hey, I've been running my business online, over the phone, through email, by appointment as well, and people walking in, but a lot of it was happening online. And so I said, I'm just going to keep going. And, luckily we made the right decision. Logan's show got pushed out to May I think it was scheduled for April. There were a few casualties of some of the artists that had shows in March and April that, unfortunately it was what it was. But everyone was so spooked that, it happened. But it turned out to be our best year ever. I think we doubled in sales in 2020. Logan's show, it was a huge success. I won't say the dollar amount, but it was our biggest show ever. And my girlfriend can attest to it. I was at home every day. I was basically on the phone for 2020. Just every day, someone was buying something. We were shipping all over the country. And I can't explain it. Maybe some of our folks here that bought something can tell us how and why. But I think because they were at home, they weren't going on vacation. I think art brings a lot of happiness into people's lives. And there was so much darkness that year that people were bringing in, happiness into their home. And, we were happy to facilitate, obviously. But looking forward, I don't know. I only know a recession through Logan. As far as the art world, in the last recession in 2008 to 2012, Logan's career took off. It was some of his best years up to that point. And again, maybe it's because art brings so much happiness, and in the dark times, people look for the light. And these paintings, at least for me personally, and I believe this for other people, when you see a painting that you truly love, and it's of a certain technical quality, you look at it every day and you enjoy it every day. You see different parts of it every day. It brings joy into your life every day. And so I'm not scared of a recession coming. I think our clients are eager collectors. They love to support art, and we're just going to keep trucking if it comes or not.
I love it. I'd love to open it up to questions, because I'm going to get another chance to ask all the questions I want. But if there are any questions in the audience, love to get those. Anybody got anything coming to mind? If not, I've got plenty more. Yes, sir.
Got a great selection of painters up here. Question for you: how do you compose your color harmonies? And for Logan, such huge paintings, how do you do it with that much paint? Do you have a system, color charts?
I don't personally. It's interesting. Tim sitting next to me has a completely different way of working, and I'm blown away by the way he puts his paintings together. But for me, color and color harmonies are completely intuitive. If I had to mix the color of the sky on this painting behind me right now, I couldn't do it. It'd be almost impossible to match it. So it's almost like playing the piano or something. Or you're cooking, you add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that. I'm just in this almost flow state when I'm working. So I don't really know what I'm doing. It's just 100% intuitive. And I think that's the case with all of us. There's a feeling, when something feels right or not. And every now and then, for larger pieces, I usually do a color study, a handful of color studies in different harmonies. I might push one more towards red, more towards green, warmer, cooler, whatever it is, just to play around. And then this one, I did not do a color study. I just jumped right into it as an experiment to see what would happen. But Tim, I've seen the way you work, and you do use color charts when you study on location and in the studio.
Yeah, I have a system of color charts that for a while I was doing a little teaching, and I always would stress to my students that you should do these color charts. One day one of the students says, well, can we see your color charts? And I'd done kind of one halfway through, and I was really embarrassed, and I was kind of caught, fully exposed, and it wasn't a good feeling. So I thought, all right, enough is enough. I've been called out. I'm a charlatan. And so I started doing them, and then my wife and children really started to panic to me because they were so much fun to do. They're fairly labor-intensive the way I do. And it's based on a two-color system and then tinted out with white. And I have them on some portable pieces of canvas that I take with me in the field. And so early in my year, I only painted outside on location. I used kind of a spare bedroom or my mother's living room or anywhere that I could if I had to touch one up, but I really had no idea how to paint in the studio, nor what a studio was for. And then over time, I felt like my paintings were lacking. From what I was seeing and what I was observing, I couldn't get there. And at some point it dawned on me that a lot of the paintings, the majority of the paintings we see in any museum, were not painted outside in an hour and a half or 2 hours. that they were much more involved, and I didn't know how to make that bridge. So these color charts were kind of a huge step, and they are so much fun to do. I was working on them 16, 18 hours a day for weeks on end. My wife would say it was months on end, but I think it was only about 3.5 weeks. And now I use them much like an author would use the English dictionary. I use them on location a lot. If I work outside, it's either just for enjoyment or my field work has become very abbreviated where I'm trying to catch the color, trying to relate the color relationships in a very short window of 10 or 15 minutes. And then I'll go back to the spot sometimes for an afternoon, sometimes for a couple weeks, and do detailed drawings of it, and then I try to put things together in the studio. I do use photographic reference also, but I try to use it just as a reference and not as a crutch, which at times is easier said than done. But the color charts, to me, so I use them just as much in the studio because I'll lay them out on the floor and I get to see a fairly broad range of what that color can do and what it mixes well with, what it can be harmonized with, or what it can be contrasted with. So at times for me, I want to have both my temperatures of the color and both the chroma and the values fairly close together, and then other times I want to have it contrasting depending on what I want the kind of the overall feeling of the painting to be. And my work, I guess, would be called representational, but when I'm working on it, I think of it almost exclusively of abstraction. Shapes and the composition and the design, value in black and white scale of 1 to 10, and then color harmonies. And so if you have a really close value, close color harmony painting, it has a completely different feel than if it has high contrast and harmonious color or disharmonious color. And so for me to be aware of that initial feeling that I drew from my subject at the time is what I constantly struggle to get back to. And was that helpful? Or that's my short answer to the question.
Yeah, we got a question over there, and we got about 10 minutes left.
This question is a little difficult to hear, so I'll translate. The audience member asked about the Maxwell Alexander Artist Retreat, which took place in October of 2021, and provided an opportunity for artists to paint and spend time together for several days in the American Southwest. He wanted to know more about that experience and how painting alongside other artists affected their work.
Was anybody?
Okay, I'll take it. We were all there last October. Matter of fact, the painting that I brought to the show, I brought intentionally from the work that I did last October in Utah. And I think, number one, I think that it's an incredible bonding experience. And I think that you grow so much closer to one another, and you begin to understand each other's work and the differences in each other's work. I mean, we were just you were talking about laying out his color palette and stuff, and man, when I saw that, I jumped in my truck and took off because I'm like, oh man, that scared me to death. But no, seriously, I mean, some of it is very humbling. I am a self-taught artist. That doesn't mean that I haven't had a lot of artists that have stepped in and just changed my life. I'm certainly not saying that. I just mean that I'm unschooled. And so I think that those experiences, more than anything, cause a bonding, and it also helps you to see other artists through their eyes. After we finished up that week, every artist brought what they had worked on, and each artist had anywhere from 4 to, I don't know, Jeremy might have had 15 paintings, I'm not sure. But we lined them up against the wall, and you could walk down the wall and you could see the uniqueness of each artist's vision. And I think that's important because it helps you as an artist solidify, okay, where am I going as an artist? Who am I? What is my voice? What am I trying to say? And for any artist, if you're going to make a mark, the artists that have made the strongest impacts in the world are artists that have a unique vision. An artist that you walk in a room, you see their work a mile away, and you say, wow, that's a Van Gogh. Or you walk in a room and you see a piece a mile away and you say, wow, that's by Rembrandt. And it's not the style, it's the uniqueness of the style. And so I think that trips like this are very helpful, in my opinion, to understand my own vision and to maybe nail that down and really grasp my own uniqueness and help motivate me to pursue that.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Following up on what Kim was saying, you all have completely unique and distinctive styles. I can see every one of your artwork from a mile away, and I know who it is. And yet, in the past, various artists have had multiple styles. Picasso is a prime example. And I'm not aware of any current Western artist, with the exception of Brett James Smith, who's made a serious left turn. Have any of you made that left turn? Or do any of you? It's a Neil Young term to me. He's done so many left turns, he's got a full circle. Do any of you intend to make that turn? Or are you locked into your current distinctive style?
It's a very good question. I think I always have things that I'm thinking about that are, I don't know if it's a sharp veer off, but there's a gentle arc away from what I've done or possibly what I'm known for. It's just I haven't stretched the big canvas yet, so like Logan does. Unlike Logan, I'm petrified of large canvases. So it might take me a little longer to get there, but I have to let things kind of percolate and brew a little bit before I can jump into them. But I definitely have things that I've been thinking about for the last 3 or 4 months that I want to try. I usually kind of take little baby steps toward it. I feel like Bob in Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray here. Baby steps, baby steps.
I do want to say though, what about your series of tree bark that you did?
Yeah, that was different. That was kind of a little thing, and I want to build on that. I want to build on that going forward. So I have done things in the past, and I just recently, it was a couple of years ago, I had a cow that died on our neighboring ranch, and I was able to get the whole skeleton, and I articulated it. And then I thought, because black Angus cows are black, that I would do a drawing instead of a painting. So I did a life-size drawing of it. And then, once you're in it, you realize that a cow is every color but black. It's kind of like when you're painting snow. If you look at snow, you think it's white. When you go to paint it, it's every color but white. It's almost impossible to be pure white because it's so reflective. So that's when I kind of experiment. I try different things. Logan mentioned is that in my studio in Maine, I heat with a wood stove, and in the New England woods, we have oak and beech and birch and pine and spruce, and as the firewood would dry, it would fall off, and I was so fascinated by the colors and the textures of it. Far too often, as a painter, one of the things I have to fight against is we think, sky is blue, grass is green, tree bark is brown. But when you really start to look at it, it's every color under the rainbow. And so I did a series of paintings, much like a portraitist would do what they call sight size. I had the tree right next to my easel. I stretched made my panel exactly the width and the height of the painting. And the only thing I tried to do was I went into it, I wanted to paint it as realistically as I possibly could. And I thought, I'm going to try anything. So I had sticks, I had wire brushes, I used sandpaper. And the interesting thing that I found is the more realistic I tried to paint it, the more abstract it became. Which, Lucian Freud has a great quote right along those lines. And so that was a little different.
Well, we're coming up on an hour, and there's a lot of really stunning artwork next door that I want everybody to have plenty of time to enjoy. But again, Beau and Logan, huge congrats on everything you've accomplished. Huge congrats to all the artists sitting up here and hanging on the wall. It's just
obviously extremely talented people, but really, really good and fun and funny people as well. And yes, sir.
And I'd just like to say one thing that hasn't brought up about Beau and Logan's gallery. I've been in a number of galleries over the course of my career. I had a quite span there where I was like a kiss of death, that when I went in it, the gallery would close 2 or 3 years. I hope that I've broken that spell. But the thing to me that separates that Beau does is there is an energy, there's an excitement, and there's a tangible electricity that the majority of the other galleries that I've been in, it does not exist. I'm not quite sure how they do it, but it's what separates the gallery and what you're going to see next door from the majority of the galleries that I've ever been associated with. I'm humbled to be part of this group and flattered, and I just want to say thank you to both of you.
I could go on, for another week or so talking about the relationships with the artists and how appreciative we are of the artists. I'll say this one more time. That was always our focus from the beginning, to have an artist-forward gallery and, be able to cultivate, a group of people that felt comfortable to create. And so I've been looking to my right most of the night, and I looked over this way part way through, and I'm like, it's crazy. So thank you so much to everyone, and let's go next door and look at some art.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I know your time is valuable, so it means the world that you spend it listening. If you want to support the podcast and help it to continue to spread and grow, there are a few ways you can help. Number one, pass it along to a friend or share it on social media. Word-of-mouth recommendations are the most powerful way for ideas to spread, so I'd love it if you could share the podcast with a few pals who might enjoy it. Number two, you go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Good reviews encourage the Apple overlords to suggest the podcast to others. So there's a link in the notes if you'd be so kind as to give it 5 stars. Number three, you can support the podcast financially via Patreon, and there are exclusive benefits for those who do, including a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter, Mountain and Prairie stickers, live and recorded video chats with podcast guests, and much more. Number four, I've also got 2 emails that I send out. The first is my weekly email called Good News from the American West, which I send out every Wednesday. It's only positive news, something we can all use a little more of these days. And my other email is my bi-monthly book recommendations email. One email every other month with 5, 6, 7, or 8 books that I've recently read and highly recommend. But thousands of people on both of these lists will vouch for me. No spam or other funny business. And number 5, finally, check out my online store for Mountain and Prairie stickers, shirts, and coffee mugs. I've got some really cool designs from Western artists with more on the way. So head to mountainandprairie.com/shop to check it all out. I'd love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so look me up on either of those platforms by my name or through the links on my website. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for your support.